talk. I'm going to have Larisa go last because I will tell you that when she presented to everybody in January, she became the model. I was like, oh my gosh, look what she did. So I wanted to kind of have her go last. So I want to hear how you hear the different things that everybody's done. And I am asking LeeAnn to talk because hers was sort of evolved and will evolve even further this year.
Yes. I kind of started out like everybody else to PBL Watershed. I did the point source, non-point source pollution activity. Mine didn't fall over. But I went to a direction that Brian brought up something was I actually did I started out Mississippi River Watershed and then came down.
7th grade.
8th grade.
8th grade.
And then I came down to the Kentucky River Watershed and then I went on down to Jessamine County to Hickman Creek. But I actually had my kids go home and actually talk to their parents about what all the creeks were in Jessamine County. So I actually had, and they actually had to bring in a homework assignment of what were all the tributaries to all the different creeks into the Kentucky River. And I actually got this guy, as my kids all call themselves the rednecks. Because I had a group, they actually labeled themselves right. And this group, this unit, they blew me on the water with it because they got very interested in it. So they came back and did that and actually had maps. That's from Fish and Wildlife. I had 2 maps and it had lots of dams on it. And so I just had parts of them. And the kids actually had to go on and they had to find their tributaries that they were looking at and that their parents told them about. And then they had to tell everybody else in the class what they found. And then I went on that. But we actually looked at Hickman Creek, but we didn't get to take our data from there because of just time constraints. We actually went to a drainage ditch that was in front of our school. Luckily, it did have water in it when we went. But my thing was, and this is where the kids love to play, was most of my kids rather play than go in and look and hunt. Especially my girls. They thought it was fun to dress themselves up like mud all over themselves. It was a little upsetting, of course. Made a talk about what was next to us, so I made them all look up. What do you see up here? Cows. What do you think's in this creek right now? So and then they all dawned, oh, there's cow poop right here. And
Cow poop's good for the skin.
Well, the funniest thing is I knew one of the girls' parents, my husband's real good friends with them, and all of a sudden she was starting to do this to get it. She started realizing what was on her. But I've actually used poison waters with my kids, loved it. Actually had all my teachers watch it. We showed it to all the whole team at the same time. And the teachers were even glued to it. So that actually showed them and got them interested in my project and actually had them researching, which was, I forgot to tell you that I actually had teachers researching what they could do to help watersheds. I've actually, from what I found out, my whole unit's totally tweaked for this next year. It's basically changed.
Do you have anything you want to share? How you're going to change it this coming year?
Some things is I'm looking, well, one thing with the drainage ditch, which I fussed at again because there was a sinkhole actually in the drainage ditch and he was trying to go down it. So I'm going into more of the sinkholes and how what happens to the area because East Jessamine Middle School is built on a sinkhole. So I'm going to bring that more into the natural hazards part of it.
So we'll look forward to hearing from you next year. See what you think. Let me finish up with Larisa, and I'll just let you talk about. Yeah,
timing-wise,
how long you have no more than maybe 20 minutes at most.
Gotcha. I'll talk fast. So I'm sorry that I wasn't here yesterday. I had another project-based learning institute for #High yesterday, and I have a lot of good things to share with that as well that runs parallel to this. I used to teach 8th grade science and 9th grade environmental science at Henry County Middle School, and I've since gotten a new position. But my passion is getting kids to do hands-on activities. And that's what project-based learning is all about. It should be about anyway. And so I teach from a web page. This is my web page that I use. And I really went completely self-paced But for this watershed ecology unit, and you can find my webpage on the Google Docs drive it shared. So it kind of goes step by step. The driving question that I had was, how does land use impact water quality around my school, my community, and in the Mississippi River Basin? I have been teaching watershed ecology unit for the last 7 years. We're very fortunate in Henry County to get a grant, a $6,000 grant each year from our watershed, or for our conservation district that focuses on the Kentucky River Watershed. And so I have been developing my unit over the years, and I also have a background in GIS. I'm an alt cert. GIS is, did Demetrio come this year with them? No. Oh man. So I will show you a free GIS online version and it's a very short form of GIS, which the kids really love. I mean, your kids are digital natives. They will blow you out of the water on what they know. You can see that I have learning targets posted all throughout here, but this is step by step what we do. I do not show PowerPoints in my classroom. I'm not a big fan of them. I would much rather have the kids ask a question and we go out and try to find the answer to. We do some structured notes, but not a whole lot. So they had to take that UK pre-assessment, which we all cried on. And then, we do interactive notebooks. On page 21 of your notebook, you will create a unit tab. And basically, it was just draw me a watershed and tell me what you think it is. That's my pre-assessment for them. And so we had a discussion about it, about where our waste goes when we flush our toilets. At the end of the middle of my unit, my performance assessment for this unit is a field trip to the wastewater treatment plant. It has changed over the years. I used to go to Lake Jericho, which is a lake in Henry County, a public lake. Then I used to go to a landowner's farm that was on the water board. And now we go to the wastewater treatment plant for several different reasons. It's college and career readiness one. These kids are exposed to a plethora of people and professionals when I go there. It's very interdisciplinary. I have all of my English language arts, my math involved, my social studies involved with the history of the Clean Water Act. And at the same time, my language arts classes are also reading A Long Walk to Water, which focuses on kids in South Sudan that have no water. And so they're getting this from all angles. I take my field trip in the fall. I've always had it in the fall. Sometimes it's terrible weather and sometimes it's beautiful weather, but it's more predictable than the spring because it's raining all of the time in the spring. So this unit usually takes me about 3 weeks, and you're going to be like, what? But we try to go through it very fast. So the first thing that we do is I ask them what a watershed is. We do the create your own watershed. We use aluminum trays and wax paper. I do bring in other things for glitter, for non-point source pollution. So I ask them, I pose the question, what's the difference between point source pollution and non-point source pollution? And it's actually listed here. You can click on any of these. There's a recycling water video too. It's going to be the Word doc that comes up. But as an extension of, did you guys do the wax paper and stuff? Did you do food coloring for point source pollution? Okay, so I actually add food coloring, like I put a drop of food coloring in, like a tanker truck has turned over. So we do food coloring for point source pollution, and then we make it rain. But then I also do glitter or chocolate sprinkles for animal poop, which is awesome. And that shows them very heavily the difference. You can visually see the difference between point and non-point source pollution. And then they realize really quickly which one is worse. So again, I'm very hands-on in my classroom. The recycling water video is pretty cool. It talks about California's water shortage, brings in current events right now. They're actually, their wastewater treatment plants are bringing in recycled water, which is essentially what every drop of water is anyway, but they don't understand that, I guess, until, it really hits them. Oh, you mean the space station? They don't chug water up there, we don't shoot water up to them. No, they recycle it. It's all pee and poop, and it's awesome. It's science. So what we start with, I did show that watershed PowerPoint that they gave to me, but I went through it really fast, and I don't do structured notes like Jen does. And my kids might hate me for it, but I am not the giver of knowledge. I'm a facilitator, and I will have, if they have a question, we go and try to get them to find that answer. So what would be an example of point source pollution? This is all after they've done their hands-on activity. The way that I engage them to get their own sub-driving questions, and you see there's red 3 notes and red 3 notes. I actually gave them their National Geographic case studies for water quality. And these case studies, I differentiated for several of my students, but they're a page and a half long. Some of them is called Water World, some of them is called Protecting the Amazon, one of them is called China's Power. The other one is called, well, let me go back, because it's been since, the other one is called Marine Protected Areas and Water Pollution. And then those are the 4 National Geographic case studies. And then this one is Mission H2O. It's a newsletter publication that comes out from my conservation school districts, specifically geared toward agricultural communities. That's at a much lower lexile. So I gave a lot of my students that had IEPs, that were my struggling readers, some portion of these articles to read, but it is multiple pages of a newsletter. So anyway, what I had them do was create a double entry journal in their notebooks. So they read and they picked out 10 facts, 10 things that stood out to them. And let me go back, China's Power stood out to me. It was really disturbing. And it was disturbing to a lot of them. I wish I could zoom in. So they had to pick out 10 things that they thought were wow facts that disturbed them about water around the world. Again, I did globally, water globally and locally. And so from that, they then had to create questions on their double entry journal. There was facts, and then there were questions or their reflection as to why, how would we let something like this happen? One of them is 700 million Chinese people drink polluted water every day. Some water pollution is caused, I can't read that. Experts estimate that water pollution kills nearly 100,000 Chinese people each year. You know, and so it's very disturbing facts, but again, so there's where they create some of their sub-driving questions for me. The water quality test investigations and presentations. After we talked about what a watershed is and what point and non-point source pollution is, and then we look at water problems around the world, we then started addressing, well, how do we identify water quality? What are the testing parameters? And they're the exact same test that you guys are doing this past week. I don't even know if this, yeah, I created this. It's kind of a jigsaw that my kids do. Probably all done jigsaws, but I put them in groups of 4, and then I got, I have from the Division of Water what each test, like a snapshot of what each test is testing for, what the causes of certain tests, like if I have low dissolved oxygen. So I'm looking at what my tests are, the expectations for my tests are, what might cause low dissolved oxygen or high dissolved oxygen and so forth. And so I have my kids read these, they then have to create, and they become experts in one water quality test, pH experts. Here it is. So water testing expert, this is the front page. This is what one group will do. So they have 3 different researchers. They have to have a description of the test, factors that affect the test and possible sources of the contaminant, a normal range for the expected levels, and then organisms that are affected. They put this all on a poster presentation that they're doing, and then they present to the rest of the class. The rest of the class then has to take notes on each of these. They have to fill in this page for me, which is worth a grade. So then they get there's a lot of different kids that become experts on different tests, but they have a brief overview of all of the testing parameters and how we identify what water quality would be. So after that, they do a macroinvertebrate practice with the dichotomous keys. Division of Water puts out, and I just got these wonderful things that you all have, but I got these huge laminated posters that you guys gave me, but then we have the single laminated posters too for all of the macroinvertebrates. And so like I have tables in my classroom, groups of 4, and so I would just give all of these kids 3 or 4 different macroinvertebrates that they would have to identify, and then they would have to come up they would have to use their dichotomous keys to identify their tolerance value, and then they would have to practice assigning that specific stream, and this is a hypothetical stream, a specific, whether or not their water is good, fair, or poor based on their the presence of macroinvertebrates. This is going to take a little bit to open. But this is what, so they have a little bit of reading the macroinvertebrate field guides. So these are, they had to identify 10, and then they were, on the back of it, this is a different version, but on the back of it they were supposed to write what they thought that their stream, what they thought the presence of those macroinvertebrates would indicate. This is actually pictures of where we go. I collaborate with my wastewater treatment plant operator and all of my team, my 8th grade team. They know how important this is for kids, and they realize the learning experiences that they have, because kids are not going to remember that packet that they're doing sitting there. They're going to remember the experiences that they had. So what I do is create, and I did not bring my packets with me, didn't even think about it, and I say that they don't remember doing their packets, but they do take these. It's a very structured field trip. I have 180 kids most of the time, and I take them all on this field trip, and I prep them for about, well, they learn how to do all of this, and then I prep them for a day on what their field trip packet is going to look like. So I separate them all out into groups, 18 groups of 10 kids, and then I have an agenda, and so like group 1 will start at, well, groups 1 through 10 will be water testing in the morning, and groups 11 through 18 will be going to the interdisciplinary stations in the morning, and then in the afternoon they'll flip-flop. So I have half my kids doing all the water testing, and then I have half my kids doing they're taking a tour of the wastewater treatment plant. And on that tour, they have a list of questions that the wastewater treatment plant and I have collaborated together for them to answer, because we think that it's important for them to know. The wastewater treatment plant in itself is just amazing for the kids to see. The first lagoon, and some of the questions, how does land use affect me, or one of the questions that I used, how does my everyday habits affect water quality? And this got really gross, and I'm sorry, boys, but like the first lagoon, the very first time we ever went, is full of plastic tampon applicators all the way around it, sprinkled with very colorful plastic tampon applicators. And so the kids were like, what are those? And I'm like, well, let me just tell you. So I took it back to the fact, how does my everyday choices, even me going to the grocery store and picking the difference between cardboard and plastic, affects my water quality? I mean, it's amazing, right? And so they also saw tomato seeds, tomato plants growing all the way around, so it doesn't just go away, yeah. So there are 3 lagoons, and I don't know if I have a picture of a packet, but I can find it. On my packets, I actually have an aerial view of the lagoon system. There's 3 lagoons, it's all outside, and then you go down into this creek, and I have set up 18 different water testing stations. We do all the testing before the outfall, and then we do all the testing after the outfall. It's very redneck. I take tobacco sticks, hammer them down in there with signs that say pH 1, and then down after the outfall, pH 2, and all the way through. So, and I've created a map for them. They know exactly how to move. So I start at this station, and everybody's moving to the right. Everybody gets 11 minutes to do their test. And then if I'm waiting on somebody, then go on to the next test and then go back. I also have a lot of experts, not only the wastewater treatment plant operator, but I have the Division of Water come out and back in our lab that does all the testing for the wastewater treatment plant. They set up a station. It's pretty awesome. They bring in their high-powered microscopes. They have all of their E. coli sampling. I collaborated with them to come up with a list of questions that they should ask. I also have Tony Roop, which is my conservation district officer, that comes out and mans the macroinvertebrate station, because you have 180 kids. I can't be everywhere, and the chaperones have no earthly idea what any of my kids are doing, but I do have a chaperone with each group that are volunteer chaperones. And I tell them, if your kid asks you what they're supposed to do, let me know, because I'll punish them deeply for this, because they should know. And so It's an amazing field trip for them. It's an amazing experience for them, and they so own it afterwards. They own their community. They feel like they are all of a sudden a part of this, and they know. We actually, I'll show you the maps that we get on and start doing. So the field trip packet is about 11 pages. They have, yes, okay, 2 minutes. All right, keep going. They also do this EPA Circular Watershed. You can put in your zip code and it gives you data on all of the streams in your area, and it will red flag you. There's some streams that don't have any data because they're so small. And some of it is overwhelming. You won't know what the total maximum daily loads might mean to you. But and then, so once we come back in, it's time to, they actually swap packets and they look for differences in their data. They look for similarities in their data. So I tested in the morning, I tested in the afternoon. What's the difference between my data? And then they come in and they do this ArcGIS online link. So, oh, and I did show them Poisoned Waters. Everybody's talking about Poisoned Waters. It's a documentary that I found. It is about 2.5 hours long, though. So if you want to preview it and like pick out, and it's listed by almost different lessons that it has. And then there's also a teacher's blacklist thing that you can go and find questions for. But it is very engaging. It talks about some very disturbing things that are happening in our waterways, and it's very current. Endocrine disruptors, PCBs in our waterways, intersects between fish, and then we talk about, well, if it's happening in the fish, what do you think is happening with us? You know, and so anyway, ArcGIS online link. I'm not gonna, yeah, I can go there if you give me a minute, but I am gonna pull up. There's no teacher resources for ArcGIS online. I did create something that gives step-by-step directions for my kids on how to go into ArcGIS. That was stuck. Can't even move. There it goes. So you will create a public account, make a map. These students love this. It is very similar to Google Earth, but it's got a lot more functionality, and so then it can become very overwhelming for us as teachers because we have so many other things to do. But the kids will love it. If you give them just some time to fiddle around with this, they will figure out how to add some layers. So if you want to steal this from me, I do not care. I do not own anything that I click the add button. So you can add these different layers: Kentucky counties, world transportation, streams, land use. Because my overall question was, how does land use affect? So what I had them do was find where they tested for water. Let me just show you. I can't pull up mine. Where they tested for water, and then they traced that water. They went all the way back to the beginning, where it actually started in eminence. And so they overlaid land use on there, and then the land use is color-coded to let you know, well, this is vegetation, this is urban, this is industrial. And so they had to list all of the land use, and then eventually their culminating assessment for me was an article that they have to write for the Henry County Local. In the past, well, for the past 3 years, I even had a woman, an editor from the Henry County Local, come in and edit my mock article, and it was very powerful for the kids to see. They're so used to writing warm and fuzzy stuff, it drives me insane. Like, that we have no time for science and technology writing. There is no time for, I feel this way, or I care about this. I don't want your opinions, I want facts, cold hard facts. And so they struggle with it, and the struggle is real. I struggle with it with them. But they do 3 different edits. They write a 5-paragraph essay for me, but it's all based on choice. Let me go back. I'm not even going to pull this up because I don't have time. But I'm a big firm believer in student choice and personalizing their learning. And so their culminating assessment for me was a 5-paragraph research essay that they had to do, and they got to choose what their topic was from these. So agricultural runoff creating dead zones, plastic pollution for aquatic and human health, endocrine disruptors in the waterways, emerging contaminants in the water, overfishing of the oceans, and the unequal distribution of water or your water footprint. And if somebody came to me and said, hey, I really feel passionate about this, I really think that I want to do this, then I let them. But I said that you will choose from one of these issues to research, and then this was actually the essential question, and then I gave them their rubrics, citations, plagiarism, all of this stuff. But I do have at least 10 of them published in the Henry County Local. And I had 3 sent to Mitch McConnell, Governor Mitch McConnell. That's my time. So I do think that it's very meaningful for students to have an authentic audience. That it's not just that it's not just teachers in the building. That it's not just, I think it's community members, it's professionals in the industry, it's parents. That authentic audiences are key when it comes to engaging. There was also an extension. Infographics are pretty cool for the kids to do. They've already done the research, so they just stick all their statistics in this and it creates a visual. So that was a can-do. I do must-dos and can-dos in my classroom because it's all very self-paced. And so kids finished, that are better writers, finished with this, and so they moved on to this. Lamont low-cost water monitoring test kits are wonderful. I don't know if you wanted, they're little buckets that have everything in them. And you might see one, but it has all of your tests. They're $35 a piece. They have all of your water test kits. They're test tabs though. They're not chemical based. And so like I let my kids, my regular kids do that, and then my environmental science kids, because I also had 35 ninth grade environmental science class kids, did the dissolved oxygen chemical and the pH chemical and the I ordered nitrate and phosphate as well. So, but those are the kids that you all have used. But there should be a bucket in there. They're yellow. They say Lamont. So, all right, that's it.
Any questions?
Did anybody ever say no to you?
No, absolutely not. I don't want them.
We can now. She's gone.
No, you can't.
How long was your reunion?
Did you?
So I would say 3 weeks between the start and the field trip, and 2 weeks to write. I mean, because I do peer edits, and then I do an adult edit in the building. I match my kids up with adults in the building, and they do another edit.
And when you're doing that 2 weeks of editing, are you moving on to other things then, or is that all you're doing?
It's rough to write.
So it's
It
about
really
five,
is.
so the week's about 5 weeks, including that writing piece of deal.
Yeah, I mean, I would say roughly a week and a half, but this is research, and this is their deciding on how they're going to do it, and it's rough.
And if we have more time, I would have Jessica also present. It's interesting to hear how Henry County has worked, because the 3 teachers, each teacher teaches on a grade level. So they really...
She wants to present.
I present. So they've nicely like worked together to figure out how we can start out with 6th grade and move to 7th grade and to 8th grade. And you heard what they were talking about in terms of looking at very local and then moving more in terms of county, and then looking more globally in terms of water usage and where water goes even across the 3 grade levels. So with the expectation at the end of 3 grades that these students have been through 3 science classes at 3 grade levels with watersheds, the expectation would be at the end of this, they would have a good working knowledge of not only what is a watershed, but what effects do I have on my watershed, and what effects does the watershed have on me, especially, I think all of you talk about the issues of trying to schedule the field trips with snow, rain, all kinds. I know Wendy also had issues with that. Yeah, and cancel all kinds because of the weather. So there's other things you do have to discuss with. We'll talk to you a little bit later this afternoon about money available. We do have money available for you folks to take your students on a field trip with buses to a stream someplace.
Can I just, I totally changed, just to kind of throw this out there for you. I totally I didn't refocus, but I totally changed my driving question not to just include plain use. So mine became a water quality issue that they looked at locally, kind of statewide. I kind of gave them that option, but all the way to the local. So they could kind of go, okay, I want to focus here and look at what's going on around me directly, or I want to look at this more global issue, but also my impact to that point of global. And we traced it kind of through the watershed and that resort. So I know some of you yesterday were struggling with this question, and how do I make this fit my content, and you can tweak it.
that's kind of what I want you to get from that is I can still bring in this watershed thing because that basically is the root of what we were doing. But I changed the question to make it fit so that I could use it the way that I wanted to use it. So for what that's worth, if that helps you at all.
And I covered 2 standards for the next generation science standards. I covered interdependent relationships and ecosystems and constructing an argument. That constructing an argument was my writing piece. How changes in one ecosystem affect changes in another. So.
And that brings in the literacy design component.
That's right. I was a member of the LDC, yes.
Yeah, that's what you have, and in high school setting, you pretty much have to spend.
Yes, you do.
Time and focus on that and come up with a product because it's a big part of the management. And preparing them in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to get ready for that would be awesome.
And other things to think about is after all the guest speakers yesterday, the panel discussions you had about, we had all kinds of talks about not just water quality, we had talks about policy, we had talks about specific issues in terms of Lexington and the government has to do in terms of monitoring and taking care of water quality issues. We heard from the coal industry, the issues they had, agriculture. So you can select those areas and areas for students to be able to research. That could be part of their question. It could be also, I'm looking at these paintings you all did just in, what, 25 minutes today. And so they could also be doing something like that in terms of informing the public. And in this case, it could be anything from informing the kids in their school. We also have some money built in the grant that if you would like to have your students create something like this and then create signs, metal signs, and you want to actually post someplace, we have the ability for you to do that. So there's all kinds of ways we can go. But I'm hoping what you're hearing is that there's not one way of doing this. And that for what it takes from your school, your region, your location, your students' interest, grade level, standards, curriculum maps, all of those things we realize you have to address when you're developing your units. We're going to push you on this very hard. That you have these curriculum guides you have to meet. But if you look at the next generation science standards, it is not about you need to know this, 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 and this. It is all about you have this content knowledge, you need to be applying it in order to solve problems, come up with solutions, be able to write about, share, argue. And so for you to do that, you've got to go well beyond just, I can take this test, multiple choice test, and tell you what the answers are for. Actually, I can take this multiple choice test and select what I think makes sense as the right answer, as opposed to what is really the correct response. Because I'll tell you, with multiple choice tests, I would probably estimate that 40% of your correct responses are students who are guessing. They don't have a clue, but they're really going to take the tests. So if you really want to think that your students know something, you know they have to do something with that knowledge. But we also recognize that you have to work within the confines of the expectations of your schools, of your districts. But we have pushed these folks, and they blossom. They've done some great work in their projects. And I know, they don't know this yet, but I know some of them talked about some changes they will probably want to make next year, whether it's because they have different curriculum maps to meet, because they have a job change, they're now teaching at a different grade level, a different school, different locations, and so they've got to think about how am I going to tweak this. And so we're going to work with that a little bit this afternoon about thinking about how to do that. But those are things that we can, this is a project you can develop and create and modify to fit your needs. But we also think it's something that the kids will really love and remember. And what everyone hasn't talked about is what do the kids get out of this? Not just content knowledge, but what were the attitude changes? What were the things they took home? That talking to everybody, I've interviewed everyone but Wendy, which I need to get today. And it's been really interesting talking to each of you to hear about what do kids get out of this. And it's not just they are more knowledgeable about something, but they're making connections. They're recognizing that they understand, they're not just understanding and informed about the community, they feel like they're part of the community. They feel like, gee, I didn't know all these things. Now they're more interested in learning more about it. They want to see where their streams go and go by their house. Where does it come from? Where's it going?
Well, and then one of the facets of understanding was empathy, and a lot of times people think, how is that a demonstration of understanding? But then I'm thinking about what you were doing, Larisa, with looking at it globally, the water quality in China and the Sudan and things like that, right? That's really creating understanding and also empathy.
So I'm gonna pull out my cohort 1 teachers for instance of the meetings for a few minutes, but I'll bring it back.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be here this afternoon, so that's what I'm trying to say.
What time is it?
1 o'clock, and then I have appointment follow.
We need it for about 15 minutes.
Okay.
And then we're going to bring it back so they can talk with you guys.
There's a website, I don't know if you guys know, the USGS, and I stumbled across this in the midst of my meeting. USGS has a water quality watch page that's real interesting because they post data every day. So there's daily data that you can go get, like I've got it up, I was kind of sitting here playing with it a few minutes ago. But across the bottom of the page you can select temperature, conditions, pH, DO, turbidity, nitrate, and I think that's discharge. Yeah, real-time discharge. A lot of the data is around Louisville. There's some in northern Kentucky. There are a couple spots in southeast Kentucky, and then there are a couple in western Kentucky. But it's real-time data. So, you know, if you wanted to do something with that, there's a resource out there, which I thought was pretty cool.
And actually, you can use some of the data on there too. If you want to look at flow, if you're looking at data when it was collected a certain day, if they have the streams on there, you can go back to that day when it was collected and kind of help some flow what's going on.
And you can choose whatever state. So if you wanted to kind of trace through the watershed and hit like the Ohio River and then the Mississippi, that's an option. So it's kind of cool.
Okay. Any questions before I take our first group of year teachers over there for some paperwork to
Just one comment that I think I mentioned it to a couple people yesterday when you guys were working on the planning. One thing that I missed last year, like, that was my first experience with project-based learning. And so something that I missed and didn't do very well last year were the milestones and how important that is, I think, in getting the kids engaged and getting the kids knowing, like having that community sense of learning, because I did the milestones as a check for me. So they had to turn this into me. They had to turn this into me on this day. So I knew where they were. But they weren't having those conversations with each other. And so I think I missed an opportunity there for them to be more of a community of learners rather than each individual doing their own thing. So I think as you're planning your unit, think about how are you going to do your milestones, how are you going to make that a collaborative effort versus just a checkpoint for you.
Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. Yeah. So basically, Becky, what time are we going till?
we're going to have a lunch break.
At what time?
Pardon me?
At what time?
Well, it was going to be noon, but you want to get it started and then we'll be back.
Okay, that's right.
So why don't we make it 12:15 when it's ready?
Okay.
Are you familiar?
All right, so if you could just pull out your templates that you had gotten yesterday, and we're just going to continue working on those templates. And you know what? I'm so glad Catherine mentioned the milestones. I don't think I have a page with milestones on there. Oh, are they there? What page is it? That's where we do.
I think it's under your
But I agree with milestones. Be a milestone. Okay. Thank you. If I remember right.
Oh, is it recording still?